Hello, I'm Clare Moody, your Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset. Each month, we hold a live broadcast where I invite the Chief Constable to answer questions on the performance of Avon and Somerset Police and what is being done to address the public's key concerns about policing in our area. This month, we're going to be talking about children and young people. It seems like a good time of year to be talking about this subject, given it's September, it's schools going back, universities are starting again, and colleges as well. So, firstly, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Police and Crime Commissioner. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you. I want to start today with a question that has been sent in to us, and I feel it's important to ask the way it was written in to me by one of our young residents, which is, why is there police brutality towards young people? Now, you may want to challenge the way that the question has been worded, but for example, when they're talking about brutality, I know more often we would say use of force in some circumstances. But can you give me some information about this in terms of if officers do use force against young children and young people, and if they do, how and when that might happen?
Okay, so yes, brutality or brutal is a very emotive word, and that's absolutely not what we have in mind when we're talking about children, those under 18. The law does allow us to use force when it's reasonable and proportionate to do so, but only when it's absolutely necessary. So there are occasions when use of force is reasonably used when dealing with children and young people. Now, when I say force, at one end of the spectrum, which is where we are most of the time, that can simply be touching someone to effect an arrest, so with no excessive force or physical force being used. It can involve using handcuffs. It can use, in rare cases, the use of incapacitant spray, like taser, or even, when absolutely necessary in very extreme circumstances, the use of firearms as well. Most of the time, force is used at the very, very lowest level because we have to be reasonable and we have to be proportionate. And that would be usually, as I say, physical restraint, or what we call unarmed tactics. Now, when an officer uses force, whatever the circumstances, however low level, they're under duty to record it. Every police officer needs to do that. And a form is completed detailing the circumstances, what force was used and why. Now, in the past year, so I would say September last year, 2024, until the end of August 2025, officers have recorded force being used, and this is for everybody, just under 20,000 times, to give a sense of the scale of that. To be exact, 19,878 times. And when we break that down by age, where the person was under 11 years old, so children under 11, that was recorded 44 times. So that's, I think, percentage-wise, 0.23% of the totality. And then when we look to older children, so 11 to 17, a form or a use of force was recorded 2,184 times, so that's 11% of the total. And of those uses for the under 18s, the vast majority of those were at the very low end of that spectrum I talked about.
Thank you. It's helpful to put it in context in terms of the numbers we're talking about and that proportion that you were working through. And actually, I think to recognise that officers understand that when they're dealing with children, it has to be in a different way to the way that they might deal with adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And officers receive training on considering what we call the voice of the child. So trying to understand the situation from the child's perspective and then tailoring their behaviour and their conduct and how they deal with the situation with that in mind.
Yeah, that really is important. And so, of the cases that you were talking about and the numbers that you were talking about, how many complaints about this use of force have you had?
Okay, so what I'll do with this is, again, put it into that wider context. So out of those almost 20, so looking at all of the uses of force, as I said, they've been recorded just under 20,000 times.
Yeah.
Out of that, overall, we've had 250 complaints.
Right.
And what I'd say are those are complaint allegations, so 250 different times where people felt that they needed to complain about the use of force. Now, if I then break down into the under 18s, we've had 18 allegations where a complainant has been under 18, so just 18. There may be some additional ones where maybe an adult has reported or made a complaint about a use of force on somebody under 18, but it's very difficult for us within our systems to pick that out. So what I can say with some certainty is that we've had 18 in that 12-month period, September to the end of August, of complaint allegations about use of force, it being excessive, from somebody who's under 18.
Thank you. And then what has happened as a result of those complaints? You know, for example, is there other evidence of misuse of force against children and young people?
Again, I'll put it into the wider context. So if we look at the 250 allegations overall in that 12 months, about half of those, I think exactly, have been finalised already. And out of those 250, those 125 rather have been finalised. 4 were found force was not acceptable. None of those involved a child under 18. So of the 18 that I talked about where the complainant is under 18, 12 are still under investigation. There will be a thorough investigation. 5 have been completed and they were given a closure of what we call, and this is a technical term used nationally, service provided was acceptable. So we would say the use of force was reasonable in those circumstances, and one of those was withdrawn. So actually, when it comes to complainants being under 18, albeit there are 12 still actively being investigated, we've not found any where the service was unacceptable, to use the technical term.
Thank you. And yes, there is a lot of technical language in the world that we move in. It takes some of the emotion out of it, I think, but you know, it's
and it's also
specific.
It's very important that when we're using force of any kind against any person, child or not, that it's highly transparent, it's highly regulated, it's recorded so that there can be accountability. So that the public can be sure that we're using our powers, which they give consent for us to use on their behalf, that we're using them appropriately, reasonably and lawfully.
That absolutely is right in terms of the accountability point as well. And that's another area where body-worn video comes in and is really important in those interactions as well.
And absolutely, our scrutiny panels as well, and the ones that that you convene, Commissioner, they will look at interactions between the police and the public, including young people, stop and search, use of force, where we can absolutely scrutinise the context of the incident, the conduct of the officers involved, the body-worn evidence of it happening, the recording that was made, was it an accurate recording of what was there? All of that is open to scrutiny and we welcome that.
Thank you. So I'd like to move on now to closer to the criminal justice processes. And we have had a question asking about young people being sent to young offenders institutes. Now, clearly that's sort of beyond the policing remit, if you like, and your operational control in this area. It's about the judges or the prison service much more. But before it gets to that stage, when you are dealing with a child or young person who has committed a crime, I know that there's a focus on aiming to divert them away from the criminal justice system wherever that's appropriate. So can you talk through the means and how you do that?
Yeah, I mean, wherever possible, as you say, we try not to criminalise children. And by children, I mean under 18. Especially where the offences are minor. Young people are learning, and a criminal conviction or a caution is something that can have lifelong real-world consequences. So we try not to criminalise children if we possibly can. What we try to do is we try to look at the reasons behind why that behaviour happened in the way that it did, and where appropriate work with parents, work with other services, and also with the victims of the crime as well, because they're a factor in these interactions as well, to find a suitable outcome. Now that could be an apology, it could be about reparation, repairing damage, for instance. It could be some form of compensation, community compensations. Sometimes for the children, we, and sometimes in partnership as well, we'll offer things like mentoring, give access to education, support for issues like alcohol, drugs misuse, for instance. And throughout this, we use what we call a child-centred approach, and that's a national term. There's national guidance around this, and what it helps us to do is find what is the best outcome for that child, all with that aim of diverting them away from a criminal path, and to avoid that criminal pathway that could be open to them. It doesn't happen in every circumstance, but usually the first or several interactions somebody will have with the police or the criminal justice system, every effort of the criminal justice system will be to understand the reasons for the behaviour and try to address those root causes and to try to prevent them happening in future.
And giving the chance to have a different future, exactly. Yes, that their life path isn't predetermined at that stage, wherever possible or appropriate. And a number of the things you were talking about were what one might call out-of-court resolutions, if you like. And can I just understand a bit more about how you're improving the use of those opportunities of out-of-court resolutions?
Absolutely. I mean, we do have a wide range of out-of-court interventions, if you like. So this is not going into the traditional criminal prosecution route. Those pathways could be some of those things I've talked about: mentoring, education, help with behavioural challenges, etc. So we have developed here an app for out-of-court resolutions, and what that does is the officer or the member of staff that's dealing with that particular incident can use that app to help guide their decision making to identify when an out-of-court resolution or intervention may be used and which is the right one. Now we've developed that app for adults, but we've also now developed one that will be rolled out, I think, in November this year, for children and young people as well. Mm-hmm. So what we want to make sure is that every child, indeed every adult, has an option of an out-of-court disposal, where that option is available to them. And by doing that app, it guides people step by step. So we make fair, structured decisions to get us to a place where we're able to offer that to people. So the adult app, for instance, it doesn't just access cautions or conditional cautions where people admit an offence, but it can also help us connect people with what we call our chance to change deferred prosecution scheme where people don't have to give an admission. Now, that's particularly relevant young adults, 18 to 24, which is open to, where there may be low levels of trust in the criminal justice system. There may be, I'm not sure about admitting this. We still want to give those people a chance to be diverted away from the criminal justice system. So the app also helps us connect everyone who can possibly be connected with it to find chance to change. And there are benefits here for victims as well. This is not avoiding justice.
Yeah.
It means that there's much swifter justice. And there's lots of evidence base behind out-of-court resolutions to say they do work in reducing reoffending, but they also do work in allowing victims to move on with their lives because justice has been done quickly, swiftly, in a way where often where there's reparation and apology, they feel that the behaviour has been acknowledged and some sense of justice has been achieved because of receiving that.
And that is a really important point, is that this is evidence-based. So, people talk about being soft, or, that somehow there isn't a recognition that wrong has been done. And so, as you say, the involvement, the victims seeing a different outcome, but also that, this is, you're not...
These aren't easy options, particularly deferred prosecution, because the interventions that take place over time, and they do involve quite detailed examination, for instance, of your behaviour and why you might be doing it.
Yeah.
And you have to follow through with that intervention, because if you don't, you do open yourself to re-entering that criminal justice route. So it's a second chance, but it's not an easy or soft chance. It's one that is meaningful, and it does work, as we said.
Quite right. And it is avoiding the simple answers and actually using an evidence base to find the right answer. So that brings me to another area which is, talked about a bit more often now, but is certainly prevalent in the world of policing, which is where the victim and the offender are both children. And this, unfortunately, is very more common, for example, with sexual offences, where often where the offenders are boys and the victims are girls most often. Data shows that half of all reported child sexual offences were committed by a child. And for children, they can't thrive if they are not safe, especially in a school setting as well. So what in policing, what happens to prevent this type of offending, and how are you working with schools in relation to these offences?
Well, schools are really important, because the start point here is about education, really. So preventing that gender-based violence, as you say, against women but girls particularly in this context. It starts with education. It starts with strong partnerships with schools. So we do deliver classroom sessions in secondary schools across Avon and Somerset. If we're not doing it in your school, our offer is that programme is available, and that works to challenge harmful behaviours. And promote respectful relationships so that people do understand the law, but also the law in context as well. In areas like Somerset East and Somerset West in Bristol, we also run the Walk and Talk scheme for young people. We've piloted it there, where female students in school or older can walk with officers and share their concerns about their environment. But that could include school, university, for instance. We're rolling that out across our whole force area. It's turned out to be a very popular programme. And then there are also, in different parts of the force area, workshops, creative projects, often done with others, to help young people understand what healthy relationships are. I know of one that comes to mind that was very, very successful at Strode College, and I know, Commissioner, you were part of that. Another one that comes to mind is a Vorg Education project in collaboration with another agency in Somerset, I think it's Collaborative Digital, where they run workshops together on misogyny, on what violence against women and girls is, on what healthy relationships are, where students can actually in the workshop through creative means explore what positive role models are, produce product like videos to reflect what they've learned, to be shared wider. So there are lots of creative ways in which we try to do that. And the bottom line is we try to maintain a constructive presence in schools, primary schools as well. Now that can come in through visits and education. It can be holding drop-in sessions. And I know we also keep in contact with the designated safeguarding leads in schools as well. So we are there for them if they want to talk about any problems that might be emerging.
Thank you, Chief Constable. And I think the point around the importance of actually normalising the presence of police for our young people as well. And I will repeat the offer that was just made around if you want to have one of those sessions in your schools to get in touch with your local police team. But also, as you highlighted, the work of the Walk and Talk scheme has been immensely popular and really useful, and it's a good point about doing it with university students as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a really impressive innovation.
And we do have a team of youth engagement officers in Avon and Somerset who work with neighbourhood teams and others, but we are very, very keen to be in the space of education because it's part of prevention, and we would much rather get upstream than be dealing with consequences later, especially for children and young people.
Thank you. So there are now also structural changes that are taking place within Avon and Somerset Police, and there's been quite a lot of positive feedback around moving to what's called a geographical model. So you've got teams more focused on their locality and their neighbourhood, with the neighbourhood and the response teams in the first instance. But with that, some of the responsibility for dealing with children and young people is moving from the early intervention team into those neighbourhood policing teams. So what are you doing to ensure that the neighbourhood policing teams are appropriately trained to take a child-centred approach, as you were talking about, and a trauma-informed approach? And how will this be coordinated and monitored across the different teams?
Okay, so our neighbourhood policing teams, part of the neighbourhood guarantee, part of the focus both from central government and from your own policing crime plan on neighbourhood policing is involved an element of training. So our neighbourhood policing teams, and that includes our new element, the tasking teams, have been trained in the voice of the child, which I talked about earlier on. And being trauma-informed in their interactions. And that means, simple terms, treating children as children and trying to see the situation from the child's perspective, listening to them and trying to see the world in their terms, to try and understand their experiences and perhaps the behaviour that the children are presenting and to respond accordingly. So that training has been delivered. In terms of core neighbourhood policing business, as I talked about, our policing community support officers and our beat managers have that presence in schools, and they've already been doing work. None of that changes with the geographic model. In fact, I'm hoping that over time they'll have more time to be able to focus on that. So those educational activities that we've always done, we will continue to do in the same way. In terms of the coordination and management of that, alongside the creation of area commands and area commanders, we've also created our public protection directorate, and that is where our core and central standards for how we interact with children and vulnerable people sit. So our Public Protection Directorate will coordinate all our child-centred policing efforts, whoever's delivering them on the ground, neighbourhood policing, early intervention teams or others, but the central coordination, the management is held by our Public Protection Directorate, and that's because what we want to do is make sure we're ensuring quality, consistency, that there remains a continued focus, and that it's done so alongside the work we do with safeguarding children more generally with our local authorities and our partners in health and education. So that's where that connectivity happens with our safeguarding responsibilities, our other partners coordinated through our Public Protection Directorate, and then delivered across the constabulary in a consistent, hopefully high quality way.
And that is going to be truly important in this process, because any change is a period of discovery, if you like, where you find out, right, okay, this is how we meant it to work, and now we need to keep an eye on how it's actually working.
Absolutely.
And so having that central directorate being set up to monitor those standards and that they are being followed, I think is really significant.
And these are areas that are regularly audited and inspected. Our own inspectorate, in their next round of inspections, will be looking at things like safeguarding of children. But these are areas that are also often inspected and audited either locally through local partnerships or indeed from other partners, say Ofsted, or joint inspections by Ofsted and our own inspectorate. So these are areas where you'd expect that to be, where we're dealing with children that are highly regulated, and so the public will always have the reassurance, I guess, that others will be coming in to check, as well as ourselves, that things are being delivered in a high quality way.
Thank you. So, the age group most likely to be victims of crime are those aged 16 to 24. And many of these will be students who are coming back now in September or starting at our universities here in Avon and Somerset. So how do you work with the universities to help prevent crime and to respond to crime where it has happened?
Well, we work really closely. So we've got 2 universities in Bath and 2 in Bristol. And we try to work with the universities, the student bodies, but also the university administrations themselves, to make sure that the students, they're part of our communities, are safe, supported, with particular focus on the type of crimes that, or the types of issues that they're most likely to encounter. So if I were to take Bath, for instance, again, the relationship very much held by our neighbourhood teams, but bringing in other specialists from around the constabulary. The focus right now, as you say, it's the start of a university term. Lots of people are starting universities for the first time. So there's the freshers, the induction period that's going on. I think we're in week 2. I think in Bath it's the 16th to 27th of September. This is a time when we can go in, when people are new, and address issues with education around violence against women and girls, especially sexual offences. We've been running a range of activities, often not alone, but with partners. So for in the past, I know we've run sessions with our independent sexual violence advisors, with our sexual assault referral centre, for instance, giving safety talks to student unions, being there in the freshers' fairs, joining licensing visits, because that's the other aspect of starting at university, the social life that happens. We also carry out our Project Vigilant, which is where plainclothes officers, supported by uniform officers in the rear, are looking out for predatory behaviour by offenders around those areas where students may be in the public domain. There'll be a presence at Bath Rugby, for instance, or the Youth Connect bus that operates in Bath. There's also campaigns like Ask for Angela, which has been heavily publicly, where people can ask for help in a very discreet way of people in their environment, usually in bars and the nighttime economy, and in a coded way can say, I'm not comfortable here, can call us and get some help. So that's very much a focus in the 2 universities in Bath. That extends as well to the colleges that operate as well across the Force area. Within Baines, I know that they do work, and I will mention it now because it feels relevant now, but also on hate crime. And working with student body representatives, institutions, inviting them to be part of our hate crime panel as well, so that people know how to report hate crime, so that we know about it and so that we can deal with it. We are very aware that to all our universities, people come from across the world, and we want them to feel welcome and protected during their time in our cities. So hate crime is another issue that we try to raise awareness of and work with people. So that's very much the focus in Bath. It's local to Bath. When you come to Bristol, there's a lot of similar themes, but the setup is slightly different because the universities, students are much more dispersed across the city, where they live, where they socialise. So we've got a slightly different setup here in that we have PC Sian Harris, who is our university beat officer. So she is the beat manager, if you like, for that student community in Bristol. She's based on campus. She's the go-to person for all students and staff if any issues come up, and her role is about connectivity, building trust, understanding the issues that are going on, the specific challenges that students are facing, and make sure everyone knows and are connected to how they can stay safe. So again, we will have done and are doing the Walking Talk initiative in the university, educational work around drink spiking, handed out lots of test kits and those glass covers, etc. We've also run Project Vigilant. You never know where we are with that because we're in plain clothes and we're out looking for that behaviour. Again, all of those fresh affairs, extra patrols. In the past, Bristol, we've also seen issues with burglary in student accommodation. Sometimes it's obvious where students live and they will be targeted by acquisitive criminals. So we're always looking out for crime trends in that respect as well. And about this time of the year, we'll often, if we have a problem, run operations to target those who are trying to predate on students who are arriving new at university with new laptops, kits, in new accommodation. And lastly, in Bristol, there's one other aspect, because students are living less in halls and much more within the community, that sometimes this time of the year we see antisocial behaviour for residents as well. So we have a specific operation called Operation Beach, where we are trying to tackle antisocial behaviour so that there can be a harmonious relationship between students and the communities and the residents in which they live.
Thank you for that. And I think picking a couple of really strong things out of there as well. I mean, a lot of work being done, and as you say, enabling the community to live together successfully, because both benefit from each other, yes. But it's important that there isn't that rub that can happen. But the work that Operation Vigilant does to keep women safe in the nighttime economy is really important, and I know that there have been arrests made. It's been very successful in protecting women from those predatory men. They're the tiny number, but the impact they can have is significant, is really important.
There's a real connectivity between the Walk and Talk initiatives, because that's where we find out where the unsafe places are, and where we deploy our Project Vigilant, because those are the places that those predators will also find, because that's where people are vulnerable. Yeah. So there's a real connectivity between what we do in those places. And as you say, I wouldn't want people to think there are dangerous predators roving everywhere, though you are right to say that we have, we've probably surprised ourselves with how successful those operations have been at actually catching precursor behaviour, people that are concerning, that we've been able to prevent, divert, intervene.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I'm glad you mentioned is the importance of reporting hate crime and making sure that there is a record of hate crime when it happens in our communities, and that is invaluable. And the last thing I'd just add to all of the things you've said about the experiences of our students and keeping our students safe is that if, and again, in a very small number of cases this happens, but women have been subject to sexual assaults of whatever description, then you will be supported and treated very well by Avon and Somerset Police. But if for whatever reason you don't want in the first instance to report, then please know there are other support services that are available to go to, including within your university, that will be confidential, completely confidential, but specifically as well the Sexual Assault Referral Centre, who are there and will support. So if you have been so unlucky, unfortunate to have been the victim of a sexual offence, then please do take advantage of the services that are there simply to support you. And SafeLink as well, who are our victim survivor support organisation as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had a very successful, a high quality sexual assault referral centre called the Bridge since 2009, and that's open to anyone to report whenever it happened, irrespective of whether you want to tell the police or not. There are strong partnerships between all those agencies, and we will be there for you as a police if that's the route you choose to take. But I'd echo with you, Claire, these are life-changing events. Seeking support for health, for counselling, and to collect evidence that you may wish to use later, those are the places to go, and I would absolutely advocate for that.
Thank you. So, thank you again. It's been another interesting session and covered a lot of ground in PQT today. And I hope you watching have found this interesting and also actually useful. We do always record questions for PQT sessions. As we said, this month has been on children and young people, but we will ask people to send in different questions for other topics that we will be covering in our monthly PQTs. So please join us for the next one, which will be on October the 22nd. Details, as always, are shared on the website, on social media, and will be put up over the coming weeks. And feedback, your feedback is always welcome as well. So once again, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.